The crack of gunfire split the dusty afternoon air in Deadwood. 4 shots in rapid succession, each one finding its mark with deadly precision. Cole Barrett's hand moved like lightning, the worn walnut grip of his customized Colt Navy 1851 fitting his palm like it belonged there. The revolver's long barrel, modified with a rifled bore for accuracy, steadied as he squeezed the trigger a 5th time. 20 yards away, the last bandit who tried to rob the Wells Fargo coach dropped face first into the mud, his own weapon unfired. Blood spread across his shirt like a crimson flower blooming in spring. The entire gunfight had lasted less than 8 seconds. "Obliged for the assistance, mister," the Wells Fargo agent called out, still crouched behind the coach's wheel. His knuckles were white around his shotgun. Cole Barrett didn't respond. He simply ejected the spent shell casings, reloaded with the methodical precision of a man who'd done it thousands of times, and holstered his weapon beneath his buckskin coat. The crowd that had scattered at the first gunshot now gathered again, whispering. Some pointed at the former Union Army scout, but none approached. Cole stood 6 feet tall, his frame lean but powerful from years of mountain living. A thick beard streaked with early gray despite his 38 years, covered a face weathered by sun and hardened by the horrors he'd witnessed during the war. The scar running along his left jawline told its own story, a rebel saber that had nearly taken his head at Shiloh. "That's Cole Barrett," someone whispered, "tracked for Sherman during the March to the Sea. They say he can hit a playing card at 100 paces. Cole ignored the whispers as he always did. He'd come to Deadwood only for supplies, ammunition, coffee, salt, and a few tools to repair his cabin high in the Black Hills. Now all he wanted was to be gone from this place where the whiskey flowed too freely and men died too easily. But fate had other plans. As Cole secured his purchases to his pack horse, a commotion erupted near the Rusty Nail Saloon. A crowd had formed, not the usual drunken spectators of a fistfight, but something different, something that made Cole's hand instinctively rest on his holster again. In the center stood a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 23, slender but strong-looking, with hair the color of autumn wheat tied back in a simple braid. Her chin was lifted high despite the humiliation burning in her eyes. Beside her stood 2 men, an older one with a face like tan leather and yellow teeth, and a younger man with the same sharp jawline as the woman. $20, the older man was saying. "She's strong enough for whatever work you need, Graves. Reed's too, though that ain't much use to you, I expect." The man he addressed, Victor Graves, owner of the Rusty Nail, grinned, revealing a gold front tooth that caught the afternoon sun. "Reading ain't what I'd have her doing, Turner." Graves laughed, producing a small pouch that clinked with coins. With practiced eyes, Cole assessed the situation and the players. Walter Turner and his son Jeb were selling the girl, clearly Turner's daughter based on the resemblance. Cole had seen similar transactions before, desperate families selling daughters during hard times. But something in the girl's eyes caught his attention. Not fear, not exactly, but defiance. When she glanced at a posted notice on the saloon wall, her eyes moved in the pattern of someone reading the words. Cole had known many brave men during the war. Few had shown the quiet dignity this woman displayed while being sold like cattle. Without conscious decision, Cole found himself moving toward the group, his spurs making a rhythmic clink against the wooden boardwalk. The crowd parted. Cole Barrett wasn't a man people stood in front of, not with those cold blue eyes that had seen too much death. "She ain't for sale," Cole said, his voice like gravel in a deep creek. Graves turned, irritation flashing across his face before recognition set in. The saloon keeper had seen what happened to the would-be stagecoach robbers. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "This ain't your business, Barrett," Walter Turner spat. "She's my daughter, my property." Cole reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch, dropping it onto the wooden planks between them. The pouch landed with a heavy thud, splitting open to reveal rich pelts, beaver, fox, and one glossy black bear pelt worth more than most men made in 3 months. I'm making it my business, Cole said. That's worth more than whatever he's offering. Graves stepped back, hands raised slightly. I want no trouble with you, Barrett. Turner wasn't so easily cowed. Who the hell do you think you are? Cole's hand drifted to his holster, not drawing, just resting there. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone present. This isn't an offer, Turner. It's a statement of fact. She's leaving with me. Then in a move that surprised the onlookers, Cole turned to the young woman, his voice softening just a fraction. Unless you'd rather stay. Your choice, ma'am. The woman, Eliza Turner, according to the whispers now circulating, looked at Cole with wary assessment. She glanced at her father, at Graves, then back at the mountain man with the deadly reputation. Whatever she saw in his eyes made her decision. I'll go with you, she said, her voice steady and clear. Cole nodded once, gathered the pelts, and gestured for her to follow him to his horses. No one moved to stop them. Not Graves, not even Walter Turner, though hatred burned in his eyes. They were barely past the town limits, the pack horse plodding steadily behind Cole's gray stallion, when riders appeared on the trail ahead. 5 men heavily armed, led by a man with a face as pitted as the moon's surface. Jake Hawkins and his gang, outlaws who'd been terrorizing the Dakota Territory for months. Well now, ain't this convenient, Hawkins called out, his voice carrying across the distance. Cole Barrett himself, and with company too. Cole's spine stiffened. He'd hunted Hawkins for 6 months after the outlaw had murdered Cole's former Army companion, Thomas Walsh. They'd been surveying for the railroad when Hawkins' gang ambushed them. Thomas died with 3 bullets in his chest, and Cole had carried the guilt ever since. Miss Turner, when I give the word, take the reins of the pack horse and ride hard for those rocks, Cole said quietly, nodding toward a granite outcropping 50 yards to their right. You know these men? She asked, keeping her voice level. We have unfinished business, Cole answered. Louder, he called to Hawkins. You're in my way. That's mighty unfriendly, Hawkins grinned, revealing blackened teeth. Especially when I come bearing a message from your lady friend's PA. Says he's reconsidered his decision. Cole gauged the distance. 20 yards separated them from Hawkins' gang. Too far for his Navy Colt's reliable accuracy, but his Winchester rifle remained in its saddle scabbard, within reach. The lady's made her choice, Cole replied. Now move aside or there'll be hell to pay. Hawkins' grin vanished. Kill him, boys. Take the girl. Now, Cole shouted to Eliza as he slid the Winchester free in one fluid motion. The first shot caught the outlaw on Hawkins' right, throwing him from his saddle. The second found another gang member's shoulder. Return fire crackled through the air as Eliza spurred both horses toward the rocks, showing unexpected skill in the saddle. Cole fired 3 more shots in rapid succession, providing cover. 2 more outlaws fell. Hawkins and his remaining man turned their horses and retreated, but not before Hawkins shouted back, "This ain't over, Barrett, not by a long shot." When Cole reached the rocks, he found Eliza had positioned both horses on the protected side, out of the line of fire. She'd also drawn the small derringer concealed in her boot, a surprise that raised Cole's estimation of her. You handle yourself well, he observed, reloading the Winchester. My mother taught me to ride before she died, Eliza said, and every woman in these territories should know how to shoot. Cole nodded approvingly. We've got a long ride ahead. My cabin's 5 hours up near Crow Peak. Hawkins won't follow us there today, but he'll be back. Why did you help me? She asked directly, those amber eyes searching his face. Cole secured his rifle before answering. I've seen enough people treated as property. During the war, after, a person ought to belong to themselves. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all he could offer for now. As they rode higher into the Black Hills, Cole remained vigilant, scanning ridgelines and trails with the practiced eye of a scout. Beside him, Eliza Turner rode tall in the saddle, her face turned toward the promise of the mountains and whatever freedom they might hold. Cole Barrett's cabin stood in a small clearing, backed against a granite cliff face. Unlike the ramshackle structures many mountain men threw together, this one had been built with a soldier's precision. Sturdy logs, perfectly notched, formed walls thick enough to withstand winter blizzards. The roof sloped at the exact angle to shed heavy snow. Most telling were the defensive considerations: small, high windows that could serve as gun ports, a covered water source within 20 yards, and clear sight lines in all directions. "You built this expecting trouble," Eliza observed as Cole helped her down from her horse. "I built it expecting the world to be what it is," he replied. Inside, the cabin was Spartan but surprisingly civilized. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, its craftsmanship revealing Cole's skill as a stonemason. Furs covered the plank floor. A table and 2 chairs sat beneath the window, and shelves lined with books, actual books, stood against the back wall. "Those were Thomas's," Cole explained, noticing her surprise at the library. "My friend who was killed. He believed books were more valuable than gold." "My mother thought the same," Eliza said softly, running her fingers along the spines. "Father burned her books after she died. Said no man would want a wife who could outread him." Cole grunted. "Your father sounds like a fool." That first night, Cole gave Eliza his bed near the fire and slept in a bedroll by the door, his Colt within reach. By morning, he'd formed a plan. "First thing you need to learn is how to survive up here," he said over coffee. "Then how to defend yourself properly. After that, you can decide if you want to stay or if I should take you to Custer City where the stagecoach runs east." Over the following weeks, Cole taught Eliza everything he knew about mountain living. She learned to set traps for rabbits and squirrels, to identify edible plants, to track game by broken twigs and displaced stones. He showed her how to use the Winchester, adjusting her stance and breathing until she could hit a pine cone at 50 yards. "You're a natural shot," he told her after she dropped 3 cans in succession. "Better than most men I trained during the war." Eliza smiled, a rare expression that transformed her face. "Perhaps that's why my father thought me unsuitable for marriage. Few men appreciate a woman who can outshoot them." Cole almost smiled back. Almost. At night they talked. Cole spoke of riding with Sherman, of the horrors of war, of his time with the railroad survey teams pushing ever westward. Eliza told him of her mother, a school teacher from Boston who'd followed her heart west, only to die of fever 5 years ago. She spoke of reading by candlelight in secret, of her father's increasing bitterness and cruelty. "I wasn't always meant to be sold," she said one evening. "Once my father had arranged a marriage to the banker's son in Bismarck, but when he died in a riding accident, father decided I was bad luck." Cole nodded, understanding how quickly fortune could turn in this unforgiving land. Their peaceful routine shattered 3 weeks later when Cole returned from checking his trap lines to find Eliza waiting with grave news. "Riders came while you were gone," she said, rifle ready in her hands. "I stayed hidden like you taught me. It was my father and Jake Hawkins. They're working together." Cole's expression darkened. "Did they see you?" "No, but I heard them talking. My father's found gold on your land, Cole, near the Western Creek. They're planning to jump your claim, force you out." Cole considered this information. Gold explained Walter Turner's sudden alliance with Hawkins. It also made their situation far more dangerous. Men kill for gold with far less hesitation than for revenge. "We need allies," Cole decided. The next day they rode northwest to a small Lakota encampment where Sam Eagle Eye, Cole's former scout partner from the war, had settled with his family. Sam, tall, broad-shouldered, with knowing eyes, listened to Cole's situation without interruption. "Hawkins has 15 men now," Sam confirmed. They've been recruiting. Word is they hit a freight wagon last week, killed all four drivers. That afternoon, another ally joined them. Marcus Freeman, a former slave turned bounty hunter who'd ridden with Cole during his railroad days. Despite the prejudices of the time, Marcus had built a fearsome reputation with his matched Remington revolvers and unfailing moral compass. "Heard you might need some help, old friend," Marcus said, clasping Cole's hand. His dark eyes shifted to Eliza with respectful acknowledgement. "Ma'am." Their final stop was Charles Wilson's trading post, where the old frontiersman provided critical intelligence. "Turner's been buying supplies for 20 men," Charles reported. "Dynamite, too. And he's filed a claim on your land already, Barrett. Paid off Judge Harmon to backdate it." Cole's jaw tightened. "So the law won't help us." "Law's only as good as the men upholding it," Charles agreed, spitting tobacco juice into the brass spittoon. They were heading back to Cole's cabin, now a group of 5 with Sam and Marcus accompanying them, when the ambush came. Rifle fire erupted from the dense pines on both sides of the trail. Cole reacted instantly, pulling Eliza from her saddle as bullets splintered the tree trunk beside them. "Stay down," he ordered, returning fire with the Winchester. The firefight was brief but intense. Sam's incredible marksmanship accounted for 2 attackers, while Marcus's Remingtons spoke with lethal authority. When silence fell, 3 of Hawkins' men lay dead, but Cole had taken a bullet that grazed his left side. Back at the cabin, Eliza cleaned and bandaged the wound with surprising skill. "My mother treated miners' injuries," she explained, working with steady hands. "She taught me what she knew." That night, as Cole recovered by the fire, Eliza made a revelation that changed everything. "There is gold on your land," she said quietly, "but not where my father thinks. When I was 15, before Mother died, she showed me a place up in the high valley, a stream where the gold lies thick as autumn leaves. She made me promise never to tell my father." Cole studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "Why tell me this now?" "Because we need leverage," she replied, "and because I trust you won't become the monster my father is once you know." The next morning, Cole laid out his plan to Sam, Marcus, and Charles. They would make their stand at Deadwood Ridge, a narrow pass that provided the only reasonable access to Cole's land from the south. The natural choke point would neutralize Hawkins' numerical advantage. "It's defensive terrain," Cole explained, sketching the ridge in the dirt floor. "We can funnel them through here, set traps along these approaches." Sam nodded approvingly. "I can create deadfalls here and here." He pointed to steep sections of the trail. Marcus examined the crude map. "Give me high ground at this point. With my Sharps rifle, I can cover the entire approach." Charles volunteered to ride to Fort Laramie for military assistance, though they all knew help would likely arrive too late. "We hold the ridge," Cole concluded. "Make it too costly for them to continue." None of them voiced the obvious, that they were 4 men and 1 woman against possibly 20. The odds were grim, but each person in that cabin had faced worse and survived. As the others prepared, Cole took Eliza aside. "Tomorrow before dawn, I want you to take the East Trail down to Custer City." Her eyes flashed. "I won't run." "This isn't your fight," Cole insisted. "They made it my fight when my father sold me like livestock," she countered. "I can shoot as well as any of you, and I know these mountains now." Cole recognized the steel in her spine, the same quality that had first caught his attention in Deadwood. He nodded reluctantly. "Then you'll take position with Marcus, providing covering fire from the ridge." That night, as final preparations were made, Cole approached the small table where Eliza sat cleaning his Navy Colt. "Why didn't you leave?" he asked quietly. "I've given you plenty of chances." Eliza's hands stilled on the weapon. "Because for the first time in my life, someone saw me as valuable for my mind, not just what I could provide a husband or father." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "You gave me a choice, Cole. That's worth fighting for." Cole couldn't find words to respond. Instead, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object, placing it on the table between them. It was a brass compass, its needle still true despite the dents in its casing. "Carried that through the war," he said. "It always points home, no matter how lost you get." Eliza understood the meaning behind the gesture. If she needed to flee, the compass would guide her. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines as darkness settled over the mountains. By this time tomorrow, their fates would be decided one way or another. Dawn broke over Deadwood Ridge in wisps of pink and gold. Cole Barrett lay prone behind a fallen pine, Winchester ready, watching the Southern approach through a brass spyglass. Beside him, Sam Eagle Eye readied arrows, not for fighting, but for silent signaling between their scattered positions. Marcus and Eliza were positioned higher up, concealed among granite boulders with clear sight lines down the slope. Charles had departed for Fort Laramie hours earlier, riding hard through the night. "Movement," Sam whispered, his keen eyes spotting what Cole's spyglass soon confirmed. Riders approaching, 15 at least, with Walter Turner and Jake Hawkins in the lead. Cole's finger rested lightly against the Winchester's trigger guard. Wait until they reached the narrowest part of the trail. The plan was simple but effective. Let Hawkins' gang enter the natural bottleneck of the ridge, trigger Sam's deadfalls to block retreat, then open fire from multiple elevated positions. They couldn't hope to kill all the attackers, but they could make a stand costly enough to force a negotiation. But as the riders drew closer, Cole noticed something that sent a chill down his spine. Eliza was not in her assigned position with Marcus. Before he could signal concern, gunfire erupted from below, not from Hawkins' men, but directed at them. 3 riders fell immediately, the others scattered for cover, returning fire wildly at unseen attackers. "What the hell?" Sam muttered. Cole scanned frantically with his spyglass until he found the source. Charles Wilson had not gone to Fort Laramie as ordered. Instead, he'd circled back with 6 riders wearing cavalry uniforms. They'd ambushed Hawkins from behind, creating chaos. In the confusion, Cole spotted a figure moving among the rocks near Hawkins' position. Eliza, revolver in hand, slipping between boulders with the stealth he'd taught her. She was heading directly toward where Walter Turner had taken cover. "Damn it," Cole growled, abandoning their carefully laid plan. "Cover me." He slid down the ridge, using the firefight as cover. Sam's arrows began flying, not at enemies but into tree trunks and rocks near Marcus, signaling the change in plans. Cole moved like a ghost through the underbrush, dispatching 2 of Hawkins' men who never saw him coming. The sounds of battle echoed through the valley, Marcus's sharps booming with authority, Sam's rifle cracking in measured, precise shots, the chaotic return fire from Hawkins' increasingly desperate gang. His mind flashed back to the previous night's daring mission. He and Marcus had infiltrated Deadwood under cover of darkness, breaking into Judge Harmon's office. There they'd found the damning evidence: falsified mining claims bearing Turner's name, backdated documents, and a ledger showing payments to both the judge and Sheriff Mills. They'd barely escaped when the sheriff's deputy spotted them leaving the courthouse, resulting in a tense gunfight through the town's muddy streets. Now, with those documents secure in his saddlebag, Cole had the legal ammunition to match the Winchester in his hands. When he reached the area where he'd seen Eliza, fresh gunshots rang out. A revolver's sharp report followed by a man's scream. He rounded a large boulder to find Walter Turner clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers, and Eliza standing before him, Cole's Navy Colt steady in her hands. "You sold me like an animal," she was saying, her voice terrifyingly calm. "You burned Mother's books and killed her spirit long before fever took her body." "Eliza," Cole called softly, not wanting to startle her into firing again. She didn't look away from her father. "He deserves to die, Cole." "Probably," Cole agreed, stepping closer. "But killing him makes you something you're not." Walter Turner's eyes darted between them, fear evident in his pallid face. "She's my daughter," he croaked. "No," Eliza replied. "I stopped being your daughter the moment you put a price on me." A commotion behind them interrupted the standoff. Jake Hawkins, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, charged into the clearing, firing wildly. Cole shoved Eliza aside as bullets kicked up dirt around them. He rolled, drawing his backup revolver, but before he could fire, Hawkins was upon him. The outlaw's weight drove Cole backward, knocking the wind from his lungs. Hawkins raised his pistol, aiming at Cole's face, a triumphant snarl on his lips. Then his expression changed to shock as a knife blade erupted from his chest. Behind him stood Sam Eagle Eye, who withdrew his blade with a single efficient movement. Hawkins collapsed, eyes already glazing. "You were taking too long," Sam said matter-of-factly, wiping his knife clean. The shooting had stopped. And in the sudden silence, they could hear Marcus calling out the all clear. Charles approached, leading his men, not cavalry as Cole had thought, but miners from a nearby claim, dressed in blue shirts similar enough to military uniforms to cause confusion from a distance. "Couldn't reach the fort in time," Charles explained. "Found these boys instead. They've had trouble with Hawkins, too." Walter Turner, still clutching his wounded shoulder, tried to back away during the confusion. Cole stepped forward, grabbing him by the collar. "Your claim-jumping days are over, Turner," he growled. "You're going to sign a confession about bribing Judge Harmon, then you're going to prison." "You can't prove anything," Turner spat, but the fear in his eyes suggested otherwise. Cole reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the documents he and Marcus had stolen from the judge's office the night before. He thrust the falsified claims and payment ledger into Turner's face. "Your signature, the judge's stamp, dates changed, payments recorded." Cole's voice was cold as mountain iron. "6 witnesses here say differently, and these papers say it clearer. The Army will be mighty interested in how you partnered with Hawkins after he killed those freight drivers." Jeb Turner emerged from behind the rocks, hands raised in surrender, his rifle discarded. Unlike his father, the younger Turner looked defeated rather than defiant. "It was Pa's idea," Jeb said, not meeting Eliza's eyes. "All of it. Selling you, the gold claim, working with Hawkins." Later, as the surviving members of Hawkins' gang and Walter Turner were secured for transport to authorities, Cole found Eliza standing alone on the ridge, watching the sunset paint the black hills in shades of fire. He joined her in silence, respecting the storm of emotions that must be raging within her. "What happens now?" she finally asked. "That depends on you," Cole replied. "You're free to go wherever you choose. I can arrange passage east if you want." Eliza turned to face him, the golden light catching in her hair. "And if I choose to stay?" Something unfamiliar stirred in Cole's chest, not the cold vigilance that had kept him alive all these years, but something warmer, something he'd thought died alongside his comrades in the war. "Then we build something," he said simply, "not just a cabin, something more." Eliza stepped closer, close enough that Cole could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. "I never thanked you properly," she said softly, "for seeing me as a person when everyone else saw property." Cole's weathered hand reached up, hesitating for a moment before gently touching her cheek. "I've lived enough life to know what matters, Eliza. Gold's just metal. Land's just dirt. It's the people who stand beside you that give life meaning." She placed her hand over his, a gesture more intimate than words could express. "Then I'll stand beside you, Cole Barrett. Not as property, not as obligation, but as your equal." In that moment, on that ridge overlooking the wilderness they defended, something unspoken passed between them, a promise neither needed to voice aloud. 3 months later, Deadwood Ridge looked markedly different. Cole's cabin had been expanded, a large room added to serve as a small schoolhouse where Eliza taught reading and writing to children from nearby mining camps and Lakota families willing to send their young ones. Sam Eagle Eye had settled nearby with his family, establishing trading relationships between the miners and his people that benefited both. Marcus Freeman had taken rooms in Deadwood, now serving as deputy to the new federal marshal who'd replaced the corrupt local law. The gold from the High Valley Stream, Eliza's secret, had been registered as a joint claim between Cole and Eliza. Rather than mine it aggressively, they worked it slowly, using portions of the proceeds to fund the school and improve the lives of those who had stood with them. One evening, as Cole sat on the porch cleaning his revolver, a rider approached from the direction of Deadwood. It was Marcus, dust-covered and grim-faced. "Trouble?" Cole asked, recognizing his friend's expression. "New gang moving in from Wyoming," Marcus confirmed, dismounting. "Hit 2 stagecoaches already. Marshall's organizing a posse." Cole nodded, holstering the freshly cleaned Navy Colt. Inside, he could hear Eliza reading to the daughter of one of the miners who'd fought alongside them. Her voice was steady and strong, bringing words to life just as she'd brought something back to life in him. "Some things worth defending don't come with a claim notice," Cole said, more to himself than to Marcus. His friend understood nonetheless. "Right at dawn?" Cole nodded, his eyes drawn to the horizon where the sun was setting behind the peaks. In these mountains, he'd found something he never expected. Not just gold or land, but purpose. And a woman who had proven as fierce as the wilderness itself. "Dawn it is," he agreed. "Some battles were worth fighting, not for what they might gain you, but for what they allowed you to keep." Cole Barrett, the hardened veteran who once sought only solitude, now found himself a defender of something far more valuable than gold. A future worth claiming and people worth protecting. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but for tonight, the cabin glowed with lamplight, and the sound of Eliza's voice carried on the evening breeze like a promise that some things, once fought for and won, could never be taken away again.